This is a very significant finding. Here is what multiple sclerosis actually is. It's found to be Lyme disease or caused by Lyme disease. Now, what is Lyme disease? Lyme disease is an infectious disease caused by the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi sensu lato. B. burgdorferi is transmitted to humans by a bite from an infected black-legged or deer tick. The tick becomes infected after feeding uninfected deer or mice. A tick has to be present on the skin for 24 to 48 hours to transmit the infection. Most people with Lyme disease have no memory of a tick bite. Lyme disease was first reported in the town of Old Lyme, Connecticut in 1975. It's the most common tick-borne illness in Europe and the Pacific Northwest, Northeast, and Upper Midwest regions of the United States. People who live or spend time in wooded areas are more likely to get this illness. People with domesticated animals that are let out into the woods also have a high risk of contracting Lyme disease. Now, what are the symptoms of Lyme disease? It occurs in 3 stages: early localized, early disseminated, and late disseminated. The symptoms you experience will depend on which stage of the disease is in. Stage 1, early localized disease. Symptoms of Lyme disease start 1 to 2 weeks after the tick bite. One of the earliest signs is a bullseye rash, which is a sign that bacteria are multiplying in the bloodstream. The rash occurs at the site of the tick bite as a central red spot surrounded by a clear spot with an area of redness in the edge. It may be warm to the touch, but it isn't painful and doesn't itch. This rash will disappear after 4 weeks. The formal name of the rash is erythema migrans. It's said to be characteristic of Lyme disease. However, many people don't have that symptom, as some people have a rash that is solid red, while people with dark complexions may have a rash that resembles a bruise. Early disseminating Lyme disease, that's stage 2, occurs several weeks after the tick bite. During the stage, bacteria are beginning to spread throughout the body. The characteristics are flu-like symptoms like chills, fever, enlarged lymph nodes, sore throat, vision changes, fatigue, muscle aches, and headaches. During early disseminated Lyme disease, you'll have a general feeling of being unwell. A rash may appear in other areas other than the tick bite, and neurological signs such as numbness, tingling, and Bell's palsy can occur. This stage of Lyme disease can be complicated by meningitis and cardiac conduction disturbances. Stage 3 is late disseminated Lyme disease, and characterized by severe headaches, arthritis in one or more large joints, disturbances in heart rhythm, brain disorders, encephalopathy involving memory, mood, and sleep, short-term memory loss, difficulty concentrating, mental fogginess, problems following conversations, numbness in the arms, legs, hands, and feet. Contact your doctor immediately if you have any of these symptoms. How is Lyme disease diagnosed? The diagnosis of Lyme disease begins with an assessment of your health history and a physical exam. Blood tests are most reliable a few weeks after the initial infection when antibodies are present, and your doctor may order the following tests. ELISA, that's enzyme-linked immunoabsorbent assay, is used to detect antibodies against B. burgdorferi. Western blot can be used to confirm a positive ELISA test. It checks for the presence of antibodies to specific B. burgdorferi proteins. Polymerase chain reaction, PCR, is used to evaluate people with persistent Lyme arthritis or nervous symptoms. Is performed on joint fluid or spinal fluid. How is Lyme disease treated? Lyme disease is best treated in the early stages. Early treatment is a simple 14 to 21 day course of oral antibiotics to eliminate all traces of infection. Medications used to treat Lyme disease include doxycycline for adults and children older than 8 years old, cefuroxime and amoxicillin for adults, younger children, and women who are nursing or breastfeeding. How to prevent Lyme disease: wear long pants, long sleeves. That's what basically Lyme disease is. Now let's go back to how they found that it causes multiple sclerosis. Is actually Lyme's disease. One of the biggest medical scandals of the last 100 years is the fact that since 1911, the medical establishment has known that multiple sclerosis is caused by a bacterium, and that Big Pharma have covered this up in order to profit from the so-called MS patients. I have someone very dear to me who has MS, and it's absolutely expensive to get this. It's at like $80,000 a year for the pills, for one pill a day. Now, Gilenia. Now, medical research shows that the living Borrelia bacteria were found in the brains of people who had been diagnosed with MS. The Event Chronicle reports, time and time again, by at least a dozen medical researchers at least 10 countries. Since 1911, the past 100 years, several older but also recent autopsy findings linked to this article found that all deceased MS patients, all of the MS patients' brains harbored living Lyme spirochetes. Even when tested, notorious for their large percentage of false negatives, were used on living MS patients. Staggeringly, many tested positive for active Lyme borreliosis. Then why isn't this common knowledge? Surely those thousands of MS experts and MS researchers can't all be wrong. Let's examine the reality on the ground. Number one, multiple sclerosis societies. Every Western country has at least one MS society. Each of those tax-exempt societies typically receives tens of millions of dollars in funding from various sources year after year. The people running those societies usually award themselves CEO-level salaries and run them as one would run a highly commercial corporation. Advertising is used to solicit funds, but if you don't read ads, then you'll bump into them one day begging you for money on the street. For all those billions that have been pumped over the decades in those hundreds of MS societies worldwide, not a single one has ever done anything really useful for MS patients. The worst that could possibly happen for the bosses of those setups is that the cause of MS would become known. A known cause would either mean the development of either a cure or at least better symptom relievers, and that would rapidly result in the obsoleteness of their money-making machine, the chicken that lays the golden egg, if you will. Such MS societies are working in concert with MS researchers, quote-unquote, employed by Big Pharma. Number two, Big Pharma. Multinational pharmaceutical corporations are the only ones doing MS research nowadays, mainly using donations to MS societies. Those multinationals decide which researchers get the cash. Researchers wanted to test the postulation of bacterial etiology of MS are shunned as if they were crackpots. Big Pharma makes billions a year on MS symptom relievers, and they trickle millions down to their foot soldiers, the MS experts. A cure would be a severe financial blow, even more so because there is strong evidence that many other neurological illnesses are caused by germs as well. Because due to the phenomenon of immune privilege, there is an inadequate immune response in the brain and spinal cord, making these organs the ideal place for certain slow-dividing spirochetal bacteria to entrench, multiply, and cause lesions. The entire concept of antibiotic-resistant, hard-to-test for chronic CNS infections leading to a plethora of neurological syndromes has to be suppressed, and what can't be suppressed will be craftily discredited. Better to give every expression of a neurological infection its own name, such as MS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, and fibromyalgia, and fund armies of ignorant experts to obfuscate the issue whilst boycotting, firing, censoring, smearing, and suing those few real experts that refuse to stay in line. Big Pharma is in business to make money, and money is made when people are ill, not when they're healthy. Anyone standing in their way is relegated to the sidelines. Patents are being bought and shelved so that cures will never see the light of day. Number three, patient advocacy groups. MS patient groups are, without exception, populated with clueless individuals for the simple reason that those who did their homework and read the relevant research have been ostracized by the group. They always were, and they always will, because that's how group dynamics work. As soon as you insist on voicing an opinion outside of the mainstream, no matter how well argued, you'll be an outcast, a pariah. They don't want rogue activists, lone nutters, giving them a bad name. Also, the advocacy groups are ranking in the dough, and they are run by folks whose main concern is that membership dues are paid on time. No MS, no advocacy group. Of course, there ever will emerge a lobby group insisting on more microbiological research pertaining to multiple sclerosis. They'll be branded lunatic fringe, and their efforts will be in vain. Number 4, MS experts. Those experts get away with calling themselves us because Big Pharma gives them their seal of approval in the form of research grants and medical media exposure. However, they are only experts in doing exactly what Big Pharma wants them to do, obscuring the cause of multiple sclerosis. In return, the experts get regular cash injections of their promising research and other goodies such as all-in holidays to exotic destinations. There never will be a cure for MS until the scandal breaks and the new antibiotics are developed that work better than the few currently available antibiotics that cross the blood-brain barrier. As it stands, it has been more than 20 years ago since any new antibiotic was developed. As soon as it was found by Mayo, minocycline helped with MS, its manufacturer, Ledrill, tripled its price. After long considering, I came to the conclusion that at least a crucial part of this debacle was due to a real conspiracy, mainly a conspiracy of silence of those few MS researchers bright enough to realize that the cause of MS has been known for at least 100 years. As is always the case with medical cover-ups, it continues to exist due to a mix of ignorance, indifference, cowardice, and corruption. The saying goes, quote, "Do not attribute to malice that what can be adequately blamed on ignorance," end quote. All the experts really are interested in is being experts, not curing multiple sclerosis. However, it is a conspiracy. It's completely normal for conspiracies to succeed because the lion's share of people who could point it out don't care. They're too lazy to get educated or feel too intimidated to stick out their necks. Microbiologist Tom Greer calls them cowards. The fact that most conspiracies are silently facilitated by an army of useful idiots with a stake in it being kept under the rug does not make it any less a conspiracy. This is by Sean Tabatabai on News Punch, and hopefully whoever has MS will go and get tested for Lyme disease and try and cure this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.